Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. This webinar today will be about best practices in hiring. So first of all, thank you to everyone for joining, and also special thank you to our partner Teamtailor and our panelists from Talenthub and Learnerbly. So I am Vivian Rackover. I am a senior account executive with Codility. I've been here for a little over 4 years, so I'm very experienced with the world of technical recruiting and really how it's changed and adjusted over the years and especially over the last 7 months. So Codility is an all-in-one solution that helps companies. We're helping companies to move into the future of technical hiring, which eventually our vision is to be done without resumes. And for now, we're supporting our companies with sourcing and attracting the best candidates, getting their brand out there, and then helping them to evaluate and interview, even remotely, the best technical talent out there so that they can quickly build their teams. So a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, this is an interactive discussion, so please, for everyone in the audience, you're welcome to use the chat functionality. Go ahead and introduce yourself. You can share your experience, add anything into the conversation. And there will be a Q&A session for our panelists at the end of this session as well. So please feel free to put any questions that you have in the question bar. And we'll be asking those questions to the panelists at about 45 minutes in. So let's get on to the introductions. We have 3 panelists with us today. And Fredrik, would you like to start off?
Sure will. So my name is Fredrik. I'm the head of partnerships at a company called Teamtailor. We're a recruitment and marketing platform. So it's an ATS combined with their marketing platform to be able to help you with the entire recruitment cycles. Anything from reaching your candidates to attracting your candidates to actually converting them into actual applicants and then streamlining the entire application process. I joined the company myself back in like 4 years ago, and then we've been on an impressive growth spurt. So nowadays we're 150 people, but back then when I joined, we were 15. We currently work with companies worldwide, anything from small companies to like large manufacturing companies, anything from churches to tech companies to retail giants and anything in between. And I think I'm in a pretty good position to be able to share some insights because I'm pretty much in the middle of everything in terms of like all the HR tech that is happening and the revolution within HR tech and what's happening within HR tech and what's happening within recruiting, because I'm pretty much straight there in the middle of everything. And I actually wanted to share a bit of a fun fact, because I think probably people will ask, this is not my home wall at home. I think if I had a pink wall like this at home, my girlfriend would kill me. So I'm actually at the office because in Sweden, we're still fortunate enough to be able to work from the office if we still please. And since Teamtailor has our HQ here in Stockholm, Sweden, I'm fortunate enough to be able to be here.
Thank you so much, Fredrik. Daniel, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm Daniel, joining here from Copenhagen in Denmark. I'm the CEO of Talenthub, a company that I have founded myself 3 years ago. Yeah, so I've been within the recruitment and talent acquisition space actually for the past 12 years. I founded my first company in 2008, and it has become a market leader within attraction of younger generation here in Denmark. So helped a lot of bigger enterprises to attract Generation Y and Z, understanding that audience. And with Talenthub, we are on a slightly different journey because the importance of candidate experience as a discipline within employer branding just came to my mind basically 4.5 years ago, where we just started realizing that, I mean, we helped a lot of companies attracting a lot of people, but I mean, 98% of all applicants, they are getting rejected, and this is why candidate experience is so important. So Talenthub is a candidate experience company. We help a lot of companies all over the world both measure and also improve their candidate experience based on data. We survey in more than 161 countries today. So we have a lot of data points from real applicants on how they have experienced different recruitment processes. And I'm of course happy to share the insights and all the ideas and inspiration that we have to elevate candidate experiences. So I'm really passionate about both employer branding, attraction, and especially candidate experience, because I think that would be as something that it will really be booming within the next couple of years. Just on the personal note, I'm 31, married a few years ago. I'm from Europe, so I love what is in US called soccer. I'm not that good at it myself, but I think I'm really good at playing the FIFA. And since they just launched FIFA 21, that is what I'm doing when I'm not sitting here. So as soon as we're done here, I'll go back to FIFA. Another evening with FIFA. I think that's it on my side.
Good luck, Daniel. I hope you win.
Thank you.
Marie?
Hi everyone, my name is Marie and I handle people operations at Learnerbly. So Learnerbly is a workplace learning platform all about that HR tech, and everyone learns differently. So essentially we're a marketplace for learning and development, and we help progressive companies like Treatwell, WeTransfer and Bulb to increase learning engagement all the way to 60% monthly, by putting their people in the driver's seats, essentially. We have personal learning budgets and curated content, and we handle all of the admin to, well, in chronological order, attract, nurture, and retain top talent. And so my responsibilities at Learnerbly, I'm a one-woman people department, and so I'm responsible for everything people experience-wise, from the hiring all the way to the offboarding. And I'm really big on people experience, starting with the hiring, whether it's people who will end up working with us on the long term or not necessarily. I think, yeah, that experience is crucial. And yeah, that's it for me. Oh yeah, I'm on the personal side. I'm in Paris at the moment and really glad to be here so I can take my mind off the imminent next lockdown that's going to happen, I think, tomorrow. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just really happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for the intro. So I'm going to start the discussion off with a question. And I think it makes a lot of sense to start out with the top of the funnel, right? So in terms of best hiring practices, there are absolutely recommendations for attracting, evaluating, and then nurturing and hiring top talent. So why don't we start with the top of the funnel? What are some of the things that you guys would recommend in terms of best practices for attracting the best possible talent?
If I'm allowed to start, I think that
Start off.
I mean, having the same mindset like as you do when actually want to approach a customer. So build like the ideal profile around what is it, what candidate do we need here, and when doing that, then understanding also the candidate journey. So okay, is it someone that is, I mean, can we attract this candidate by posting at a job board? Are they actively seeking? Are the talent pool big enough to go out there and actively seek them? Or is it something where we need to nudge a bit more and source them in different ways? And of course, the unique selling point for the position should be based on the candidate profile, basically. So that would be where I will start, actually building everything based on the ideal profile.
Definitely, and that was actually what I was going to add before Daniel chipped in and pretty much took the word out of my mouth. Because you need to understand your candidate like persona. So who are you trying to hire? Where do they exist? What triggers this person's interest? And before you even do that, before you even start advertising, that goes for when you're trying to write your job, when you're trying to do something, you need to do your research. You need to do your homework and understand, okay, who am I going to hire? Where do these people exist? What triggers them? What interests them? Where do they exist? Where do they hang out? Is a traditional job board the way to do it? Is social media the way to do it? Do I need to source them? You really need to make sure you do that. And then once you've done that, you can really start shaping the offering to that client, to that candidate rather. Just like you say, within you shaping the customer journey, you need to understand and shape the candidate journey, to understand the touch points. Okay, we reached this candidate through Facebook, for example. Then you need to understand, okay, what sparks their interest. Once you spark their interest, okay, what really catches their interest, make sure this person is really interested enough. And you really need to do your homework. It doesn't have to be something you do of a large scale. Just try to understand it like on a broad level. will really help you understanding the candidate's behavior before you actually just go out on the limb and try to like publish a job into the void. Just understanding who are your candidates, where they exist, and understanding their behavior will really help out a lot in terms of attraction.
One thing that I found really quite powerful and also not so time consuming, which is a double whammy, is as part of your employer value proposition, in order to craft something that's going to attract people who will really mesh with your values and how you operate, is just practicing, you know, the same principles as leadership vulnerability and just putting your processes out there. So building an employee guide has been something that's been a huge return on investment of our time for us at Learnerbly. We've got a public employee guide that's available online where people can see the types of policies that we've got and like the types of things that we like to talk about, and that is already gonna indicate talent whether or not they feel comfortable in our environment and if that's something that they're interested in.
You know, before going into the thread, like you have to start from within first. You need to make sure that your culture and your people and your offering and everything, that is the most essential thing when you're hiring. Like there's a saying, like where at least in Sweden, I don't know if it's a saying somewhere else, but you paint the pig, or you so pretty much you try to put makeup on something to make it look pretty when it's not actually pretty. And you can't really do that with culture, because you really need to make sure that you emphasize it, and you need to start off from within. Try to use your employees as a channel and really make sure that they're engaged and have some kind of like a reward for them to be engaged in sharing their job posting, and really try to make sure that your employees love working there, because eventually that will just spread out through their social media, and their friends will see it, and their friends of their friends will see it. Like I know one of our biggest benefits of Teamtailor is I enjoy working here so much, so I will post videos on my Snapchat or my Instagram stories, and then my friends are like, "Do you ever work at that company? All I see you doing is having fun, playing ping pong, whatever." And because it's a fantastic company, but we also see that it's a fantastic, cool company with a lot of cool things that we do. We actually make a difference. And I think if you really focus on the culture first, that is the most essential thing that you can use in order to like attract candidates. You need to like create a fantastic culture where people will love to work, because then pretty much it will be a self-playing piano after that.
But agree, Fredrik. But I would also just like to share some insights here, because I mean we are collecting feedback from applicants also actually during the attraction part of the process, and actually also right after they applied. And I think of course it starts with your employer value proposition. Why are you a cool place to work? That is a request from today's generations of workforce. And this, but what we hear the most actually from candidates is that they miss also sometimes a more detailed description in the job ads about the specific role. So sometimes it can also be a thing that you have actually forgotten what it's all about, because you know you're all into the culture part and the purpose, why we are here, what we're doing. We are building this huge cathedral, but at least I can just, based on a lot of feedback, see that what makes a really good job ad actually, that is also describing the specific task that you're going to work with, the tools that you're going to work, why this specific job is interesting, who are your teammates, and how are you collaborating, and how are you operating. So the more concrete you can make it, the better actually.
Before we get into specifics of how to craft a great job ad, I think that process-wise, the best thing you can do for yourself is have the shortest possible feedback loops. So, you know, if your employer value proposition isn't perfect, that's okay. Just be open about it and ask for feedback. If people feel like they can have an impact on how you operate before they even belong, this is going to foster trust ahead of the curve. And the key thing to foster trust is dependability and time. So at least you're making a head start on the time factor.
Yeah.
But actually, Maria, I would just say, sorry, Vivian, but I would just like to say that I can see that the recruitment process actually can be a competitive advantage in the recruitment, in the attraction itself. You know, so for instance, saying apply, it will only take 2 minutes, and we'll get back to you within 48 hours. I mean, that will drive attraction in itself.
Yeah.
So,
and like it's speaking of the job postings, I just want to add one final thing, because a lot of people say that the traditional job posting doesn't really work anymore. You can't really write a job description to highlight and attract developers and whatever. And we have actually had a really funny story about one of our clients who chose to write a really funny job posting. And I think this job posting had like 500,000 views in a week because it was just that creative, because they took a copywriter who's usually built to be able to do something for marketing, and then they took their marketing team and used their advantage to make sure that this role, which is one of their like standard roles they usually hire for, and they had it up all the time, took the time to actually write a really creative job ad that actually emphasized both the culture as well as understanding what you will be working. And just writing it properly will do magic when you're actually writing a job ad, instead of just copy pasting your old ones that you've always been using based off your value proposition. But hey, Vivian, you had something, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I think that transparency and trust are a couple of things that a lot of candidates feel like they've really lost as hiring has gone remote first. And so I think that that's one of the most important pieces. And I did want to ask a follow-up question too, because we've talked a lot about how building the appropriate profile and understanding the ideal candidate before you even reach out to them and post job ads or anything like that. Which I completely agree, especially because there are so many opportunities. Candidates are always going to be drawn more to things that are really specific to them. What advice would you guys give to companies to be able to be tailored in that approach without being too narrow in their focus and potentially unintendedly ruling out candidates that might actually be a really great fit, especially when diversity is such a huge initiative for most companies right now?
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things in there, but in terms of understanding what the ideal candidate is capable of achieving, my first advice is, before you even go into writing a job description, your hiring manager should start with an outcome-focused scorecard and have clear metrics of what they want this role to achieve in the first month, 3 months, 6 months. You can't write a job description before you have the desired outcomes. Otherwise, you're bound to have something that's just output focused, and that's just not the best use of people's talent and time.
Yeah, and there are fantastic tools to be able to map out. And one of the biggest things you mentioned there is, like, a lot of people tend to have to hire people who are a culture match, not people who are a culture add-on, or people who can add something to people. People are drawn to people who are very, very similar to themselves. And there are fantastic tools, and this is something that I know a lot of companies are already doing. They actually send out assessments or something else towards their internal team to understanding, mapping out, okay, our existing sales team, for example, what kind of personal qualities do they have? What differentiates them? Because everybody tends to see people are very similar, but once you actually break it down and allow people to like measure their logical their capabilities and personal capabilities, you see that they're quite spread. And based on that chart, you're able to see, okay, we can need someone who can fill this gap because we don't have anybody in here. And based on that, you can really fill it up. And you or see, like, they need to have these criteria and possibly this one, because that's something we're lacking right now. And so if you understand your status quo, that will really help you understand, rather going forward.
But related to your question, Vivian, about the narrow focus, I also think that, I mean, it's also something about, is this candidate that we want, is he or she out there? I mean, is it possible? I mean, sometimes a hiring manager can have like different things that they want to put into the role. But again, if you're saying, okay, now we're building an ideal profile, and then you have to look at the audience. So how big is the audience? Fredrik said things before, like using, for instance, Facebook or other media platforms where you can segment on interests, prior experience. You can use LinkedIn and all that. But I think doing a recruitment is always about also finding out how big is the audience and how do we want to approach it. And of course, then it might make sense to say, okay, then we maybe are structuring a little bit around, because then the audience would be wide bigger, and then we can actually fill this specific position. Don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah, saying there should be a targeted approach with a very wide audience.
Yeah.
No, at least based on how many roles. If you're going to hire 100 salespeople and you're making this selection criteria like this, then you might have a problem. So it's also something about taking the audience and the target into consideration in your attraction model.
Definitely.
And also, so how do you make the roles stand out too for companies whose brand isn't Google or Facebook or really well known in the tech world? What would you recommend for those organizations?
You need to be personal. That's the feedback that we see, and what's really that really stands out from our clients. Everybody's trying to be the Spotify's, the Googles, the Facebook, but nobody can compete with their benefits because they give you everything for free and they have the salaries that are unmatched and everything because they have the opportunities to do so. But most people don't want to work for that. They want to work for somewhere where they can really have fun and have a personal opportunity and actually see themselves being there. Like, this is an actual person. I'm actually going to be working with this kind of person and this kind of I can see myself being there in a different way. And I think being personal and being different is the opportunity to stand out. Don't try to copy what everyone else is doing. Okay, understand, okay, what is our unique selling point rather than Spotify or Google or Facebook. And that's what really makes you stand out from the crowd, especially if you don't have the big resources and the big brand to support you.
And I would say that it's also very much about, you know, selling the journey and showcasing the journey, right? Both on the company level, but also at the personal level. I mean, in my previous job / company, we did a lot of employer attraction for younger generation with lots of opportunities, right? And it was not selling the role, it was more like selling what will happen with your career if you enter this world, right? And that doesn't necessarily need to be a big brand. Actually, a big brand, then you could say, then you'll just be 1 out of 100,000, right? But I mean, here we are on a journey, and imagine where you will be in 5 years together with us, basically.
Exactly. Not everyone wants to work for a Google or Spotify necessarily. And what's important is to be transparent about what you've got to offer so that everyone is 100% confident that it's going to be a mutually beneficial growth journey.
Well, and I think the career piece is especially important because if you're at a smaller organization where you do have more of a voice and you are going to be able to work more one-on-one with your direct managers, you're going to have much more opportunity to grow out your career and your skill set than you would at a major company.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to move now to more of the evaluation of candidates. So I'd like to ask you guys to share some recommendations on best practices for moving people through the funnel, deciding who to move forward, deciding ultimately who will receive an offer. And I'd really love to ask for some specific recommendations as well, keeping in mind things like diversity efforts, reducing bias, and also how best to evaluate candidates for those that can't interview people in person right now.
We can see based on our data, we have like almost over 8 million people visiting our career sites. We have millions of candidates going through Teamtailor in a single basis. And we can actually see that the average, at least from our perspective, that candidate experience, if we go backwards there, interviewing people remotely through can actually be more productive because the actual interviews can actually be more productive, and you really have, and people are more focused when they're actually sitting there, and you can really structure the interviews better, and you can really have a better process of doing it. But in terms of diversity and in terms of hiring the right people, like the human mind can only do certain things. I think getting the right tools to be able to help you do that, setting, of course, like there's different, it's like the data and there's some statistics on everything, but using an assessment solution, for example, could be a really good fit for a company to help you screen people so everybody gets the same opportunity, and you match them based on criteria and personality, and then you add whoever's got the experience, and then you add a structured interview and everything else. But you really need to make sure that you can give everybody the same opportunity and actually measure based on potential and based of their quality, instead of just trying to hire based on their experience. Because if you think back, for example, like the people you graduated high school with, like you all graduated and you all pretty much have the exact same education, and you went on to college and you all have the same education, and then you work at a workplace and you have 15 other people who have the same title. But looking back, I think you can all think that not all of these people will be able to do the job just as well. Not all of these people will be able to do your job just as well. Not all of these people were equally as good at what they were doing in that scenario. And just because they have the same experience doesn't mean they have the same potential. So you need to be able to measure them based on their actual potential and based on their actual like personality and their logic instead of just their experience. And that's where you make the right options and make the right selections.
Big plus one here on the hypothetical question, so that people can demonstrate their motivation and their logic. and also weaving in some exercises. So at Learnerbly, we've got a fair amount, well, like 4 stages on average for the interview process. The first one being a screening phone call, and then the second one is an exercise typically, so that people can really demonstrate their skills as opposed to just being based on experience. Because if you can do the job and you can do it great, I mean, that's what matters ultimately. I've made a couple of notes as well. So a mix of exercises, hypothetical questions, and experiences. Also, anonymized CV, that can be really helpful. And on the diversity piece, there's a bunch of spreadsheets out there and that recap places where you can advertise your roles to communities across a variety of like intersectionalities, because ultimately LinkedIn and other major platforms are only communities as well, and they will perpetrate big echo. And they might.
I think it's something from your end, Vivian.
Sorry, is there an echo on my side?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's try it. I think it's fine now.
Perfect.
Yes, what was I saying? That it's important to proactively mitigate the fact that the major platforms are only going to facilitate a certain type of profile, and to proactively reach out to communities that are more easily accessible to certain talent pools as well.
But I actually think that your point before also, Marie, starting with what is the selection criteria actually for this specific role, and how can we cover those? I mean, throughout the recruitment process in a non-biased way. I think anonymous CVs is a really good idea, and also doing case-based things where you. But what is important here, also looking at candidate experience, that would be, of course, what I will be advocating for. But that is to tell the candidates upfront how you are structuring this. I mean, tell about the recruitment process. That's also the lack in the diversity and inclusion debate. I think that is because that it is so hidden what is going on, right? It's like this black box. I'm delivering my application, and then I don't know what to expect, and then I'm hearing one thing one day, or I might even don't hear anything ever again, which is really sad when that happens. So my point would be that going into the perfect job ad, or at least the perfect attraction, that is also telling about the recruitment process.
Oh my God, yes.
And selection criteria.
Expectations management changes everything. So there's this time in August when we were hiring for a role, and the hiring manager was on annual leave during like the launch, and so we use Teamtailor. And there's bulk options. I bulk messaged like 50 candidates just saying, hey, look, this wasn't expected, but the hiring manager is on annual leave for a week. It doesn't mean anything about your application. It doesn't mean that you're being put forward or not, but you can expect to hear back from them, you know, not for at least 10 days, because they'll be playing catch up for 3 days. And that had such a huge positive impact. I can tell you that anyone who's talented, who was part of the people who received that message, who didn't get the job, will still remember Learnerbly as a place where they know they will be respected and that they can trust.
Yeah,
I think that's a big...
I think, and this is something we.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is something we work with a lot, and we try to give people the tools to be able to do this, because the biggest issue is people have unconscious bias and they don't really know how to do it, and there's things where you will unconsciously do something instead of certain things. So we try to help with like our clients by providing the tools to be able to do so. We added anonymous hiring activities in Teamtailor, so you can choose to make every single candidate that applies in Teamtailor anonymous. And Marie, one of the things that's being launched soon is every single candidate will be able to log in and see where are they at in the recruiting process, to be able to have transparent recruiting processes as well. But in terms of diversity, you need to be able to understand and not just focus on the same thing. And this goes back to one of the things with writing the job description as well. Like the way you write a job description for example, will maybe get some girls or for females or some other people not to apply for the jobs just because of it's written by someone with a more like testosterone-ish attitude. So it's also a lot with how you attract and what your brand represents as well. That will also work a lot with in terms of diversity and inclusion, because the way you market yourself and represent yourself, that will be a clear decider of who actually applies for the job. And in the selection process, there are tools to help you with that as well. But you need to start off earlier than that as well if you need to work with the inclusion questions.
We've got, sorry.
You go ahead.
I think, yes, it's important to make it accessible, and also, so it's the little things, like try and not use any acronyms at all. Like it needs to be easy to read, easy to engage with, even if there are acronyms that the candidates are familiar with, unless you're looking for a highly specialized person and that's actually a requirement, an actualized requirement for the role, then making it as plain as possible and as straightforward as possible is super important. There's a bunch of free bias decoders out there as well, which will tell you the linguistic implications of the words that you're using, which is really, really great. And then one last thing is to be completely deliberate about your intentions. So I know that actually I wouldn't have applied at Learnerbly if it were not for the disclaimer paragraph above the requirements that says, we know that some people have a tendency not to apply unless they match 100% of the requirements. If you think that this job is great for you, please apply. I swear to God, if it hadn't been there, I wouldn't have applied. I didn't think I was qualified, and I've been at Learnerbly for 2.5 years, and I've been promoted in the meantime. Like, it's really important to be deliberate, because you don't want to hire people for how confident they are. You want to hire them for how competent they are. And confidence is something you can work on.
And adding to that, typically men tend to overestimate their opportunities. So that's also something you need to be aware that mention that kind of thing. It's such a small thing. It's one line in the job description that tells you, even if you think that you will be a good fit, but you don't match all the criteria, apply. Because men tend to be like, hey, I can do this, but females are more restrictive. So it's small things to actually set expectations and tell them what you're getting. And then the selection process, of course, there are a great deal of tools to be able to help you with anonymous hiring, like anonymous CVs, like filtering the people based on cases, using cases and actually testing the skills instead of your personal bias when you're sitting in an interview. And that's also something you have to consider, because a lot of people tend to hire people like. So when you're in the interview process and the person might not be someone you personally connect with, but you then have to like think above that or beyond that and like, okay, the skills this person has, is that what's right for this role? Instead of just, okay, this person is a really nice and funny guy or funny girl, I'm going to hire him because I think he will do the job and I really like him because we had a really good chat. This is also something you have to train yourself, not to just think about, okay, this is a nice person I'm sitting in front of, actually think about the skills and everything else, because it's really hard, and especially within certain roles where people are very outgoing.
And that transitions nicely into actually the next thing that I wanted to ask everybody, because I agree, it's incredibly important to create a candidate experience where the candidate feels they can see that they'll be respected and that they'll be encouraged in that process and in that role if they're accepted. So if you interview 10 people in that way and then make one hire, you now have 9 people that are going to be really interested the next time you post a role. And it's one of the best ways to really build out a great brand, even if you are a relatively unknown company. So what are some of the mistakes that should be and can be avoided in order to create a really successful recruitment process where candidates will come away wanting to apply again in the future?
I think we touched on a lot, but one of the biggest things, the first thing I'm just going to mention is communication and clear expectations. Like, you want to know, when am I going to get a response? Where am I at? What's happening with my application process? Just the sheer fact that you get sorry, you're not the right fit for this role, but try apply for something else. People have so low standards, so you really just need to over communicate, and you can really do that with ease, and that really sets a new standard. But you guys are the experts in this. I'm going to let you guys take the tone.
But I mean, there's a lot of things in this actually, but what we have identified is actually 10 10 drivers basically that drives good candidate experience, and that is quite a good way of looking at it. I think it's both something about, I mean, ease of use. It's something about, I mean, expectation setting that is extremely important, the transparency, and the way that you communicate. That, I mean, one of the mistakes that a lot of companies do in their candidate communication, that is that they have this applicant tracking system that generates automated emails. And it's very clear that these emails, they are very automated and they are very systematic, which is like, okay, we are building this employer branding campaign where we're really like nudging candidates to apply for our company because we have these employer value propositions where we put people first and all that. And then the first time that you interact with the company, you receive a 100% systematic email saying, "Dear candidate, thank you. We don't know when we'll get back to you, but have a nice day." I mean, for a lot of companies, that's the most sent out email. So I mean, that is an extremely important thing. And there are a lot of things that you can do in that specific part of the recruitment process where actually the candidate experience starts. And that is telling about the timeline, telling about the process, what are you doing, when should they expect to hear back from you, and all that things. So that was just some example. And actually, a thing here that I also think is relevant is that when talking about candidate experience, a lot of companies they tend to see that or think that the rejection is the most important part. And it is also leaving this good impression. But the rejection that is so connected to the communication earlier on in the recruitment process. So it's really connected to the job ad. It's really connected to the confirmation email telling about the process. And that is actually the key to create a good rejection, that you're just delivering on what you have promised.
Yeah.
To link back together the transparency point and the automation point, the solution, I don't know if it's a solution, but that we found is the emails that are automated that candidates get say, "Hi, thank you for your application, thank you for your time, yada, yada, yada." At the end, there's an outline of what the process is going to be and what stage they're at. And at the beginning, there's a robot emoji and it says, "By the way, I really wrote this email, but it's automated. If you have any questions, you can send them here." And a real person does monitor this inbox. It's okay that it's an automated email. You can, say it, and then the person will know exactly where they're standing and that they can reach out, and that a real person will be able to give them the support that they might need.
But you can also use, I mean, there's a lot of great functionalities within these ATSs like Teamtailor and other great solutions where you can make your standard emails very customized. And it seems like that not all are aware of that, basically, because I mean, you could say, "Hi, my name is Maria. I'm the recruiter for this position," which you can cover in a short code, right? So you can actually individualize that also in a larger scale, and that is the real thing here, I think, because I mean, having 5 candidates for a position, then it's easy to deliver a good candidate experience. That is treating them but what if you have 500 or 5,000? But they're your tools and the way that you have outlined the process and the structuring, that is really important.
You shouldn't be afraid to use the automatic emails. That's the thing. You need to be aware of that. You need to make them personal. And just doing a no update email, like, "Hey, I just removed you from inbox to that I'm now reviewing your profile, and the next stage will happen in 3 days." Like a small thing like that, and that could be triggered automatically by the platform, but it will make heaps of change in the candidate experience because they know what's happening and they just appreciate that they know what's going on. And it doesn't have to be like, "This is an automatic email from the ATS saying that you've been moved to the new stage." It should be like, "Hey, I'm the recruiter. I'm currently reviewing this. This is what's happening. In the meantime, here's a fun fact that we're doing this next week." And it's like, don't be afraid to use the automatic emails, but make sure you make them personal. Add an emoji, add a GIF, add a video of you doing something else. Give them something to watch, a video of when you went to your last conference, so they can interact with you guys in some way and actually start building a connection. It's small things that makes a huge difference.
And maybe also, I mean, one of the things that we are working with a lot of our customers about right now, that is basically, we have just raised a question saying, why do you only have one rejection template? I mean, I'm not saying that you should have 50, but I mean, most positions there are maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 reasons for rejecting. So why not invest the time to create those 5, 6 templates and making it a bit more customable than that you did with only having one, and actually put some energy into that. And of course that is based on, yeah, but then we have to choose between these 5 templates every time that we reject. Yes, it would demand a little bit more of resources. But back to the theme of this webinar and the headline, that is how to attract. I mean, the attraction of your next hire have already started on your previous hires, right? Because the candidate experience, that drives attraction to your company. So the point would be investing that time, that 5% that will come back to you 10 times more.
And then in each of these 5 templates, you can add some resources that people have, that you've heard are helpful for this specific problem. And that way you're also adding value, even if it's through rejection.
Yeah, and small things. At a certain stage, don't send that email. If you've met the person 15 times, don't send them the email. Hey, give them a call, text them, do something. Like personal interaction, it's a huge thing. Like it takes you 5 minutes to say, hey, sorry, but we proceeded with someone else. You were really good, but then just make sure you allocate time to do that, especially at a certain stage once they've interacted with your company enough. Like that's a huge difference. If they've had 5 interviews and they're in the final stage, and then they get, sorry, we proceeded with someone else because of blank reason, that just like removes everything you've worked for in the beginning of the recruiting process.
I agree, but I would actually say that, I mean, always, I mean, when you have the personal interaction or the face-to-face interaction, also give the rejection in that sense. But the rejection call can actually, for candidates, also be a quite, I mean, stressful call. I mean, it's a sad message. So actually, I would suggest everybody to follow up after the rejection call with a mail outlining things, and also, of course, asking for feedback. I would say that would be a good idea to understand the process from the candidate point of view, and just outlining the things regarding the rejection. And actually, going back to that, because now we're deep diving into the interview parts of it, I think that, I mean, there's a lot of our customers, huge customers, where hiring managers are having a role, and where you from HR or talent acquisition are trying to give them a guideline and tools on how to structure these things. And I think it's important to think before, during, and after as a part of how you want to structure the processes around interviews here to create a good candidate experience. So for instance, making sure that the candidates, they have an agenda before the interview. That is actually a request we have seen from a lot of candidates, that, I mean, I was invited for an interview, but I didn't know what was about to happen. I mean, that's a good way to start, right? But also giving or supporting the hiring and giving them the right tools, tips, tricks to actually give the right direction, the right rejection afterwards, the right constructive rejection.
So let's move in.
But honestly,
because we have gotten a lot of really great questions from the audience, and I want to make sure that we're able to answer those in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So the first question that's come up, what are some of the biggest challenges for attracting talent during these unprecedented times, and what are some recommendations that you have to overcome these challenges?
I think everybody being stuck at home and everybody being on their desktops or their phones at all times, you get to see a lot more advertising. You get to see a lot more. You have less human interaction. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. It's a lot harder to emphasize your brand. It's a lot harder to measure and really highlight the experience in mind, and some of the values for your company that used to be one of the biggest benefits for your company. But really try to make it like the personal stand out, and really try to emphasize that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of things, and I think it's definitely company specific and industry specific and geographically specific, but there are different issues with everything in single audience, but it all narrows down to what we've spoken about. You have to be transparent, you have to be personal, you have to be unique, you have to stand out, and try to stand out from the crowd in one way or another, because people will be stuck at home using their computers 10 hours a day, see 10,000 advertisements. So you need to stand out from the crowd. Just create a fun video of you saying something, whatever, can stand out from the crowd, instead of just being the boring like Facebook sponsored posting that they see somewhere else in their newsfeed.
Yeah, I could share that what I have seen as the most a problem for some of our customers, at least, that is that if they have been depending primarily to the younger audiences, if their attraction was really much depending on, for instance, visiting schools, universities, doing campus recruitment, you know, having their own events, you know, face-to-face branding events where they could hear about the company and such things. I mean, if you have had an attraction based really much on activities like that, then you need to be good at, you know, adapting to the new standard here, moving everything online. I think that we have seen some of our customers who are doing that and outperform the market basically. I just saw a graduate campaign for Novo Nordisk, a big pharma company, global also, and they have thousands of attendees to their webinar about it. So they have really reached a lot of people. Then we also see other customers that hasn't been good enough to adapting to these new standards where they are more struggling about what to do. All our events, they are cancelled. and that is of course a problem.
Murray, do you have any tips of, because I think it's you're in detail about this kind of stuff, and you've been hiring a lot during this. I think in like the vast majority of the people at Learnerbly have started during the pandemic or something, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, so we were 10 people last August, and now we're over 30 people. We were about 15 at the beginning of the pandemic. So yeah, we grew by 100% during the pandemic. I think with struggling with attracting, we've had at the beginning of the pandemic, particularly, well, the reverse issue, where you would, as we mentioned earlier, Fredrik, put a job live and then have 100 applicants within a very short amount of time. And what we found really helpful for that, and I'm conscious that I'm doing a little digression here, but was asking screening questions that are specific to the role. So we ask one screening question around one of our company values, one that's specific to the role, and one that's around learning, because that's what we do, so that people can already engage with company and share their motivations, and we don't just screen based on, you know, experience and curriculum, but we can really have something to work with to start with.
But maybe, Marie, actually that's also where to actually think of, just thinking of it now, that I mean, during a pandemic, what happens is that people realize that, okay, the sky is not the limit here, and everything will not be like super fantastic. So maybe you also start feeling more confident about where you are, and you can be afraid of choosing a new company that you don't know anything about, because I mean, what if they are bankrupt in a month or two just after that you have joined them? And so maybe it's more important during your attraction that you actually are telling that, hey, it's going good here, we are on a good journey, that I mean, we are growing 100%, and I mean, yeah, make it more, make that part of the story more clear.
Yeah, and just seeing the unemployment rate rise, stability is probably one of the biggest benefits that a company can have right now. If you start here, we won't let you go because of that the company isn't doing well in 6 months. That's probably one of the biggest benefits you can have as a company right now if somebody's unemployed or moving from their current position to somewhere else. Because the last thing they want to do is go from a safe environment where they're full-time employee and they're past their probation, and then leave to a new company, and then all of a sudden, oh well, this company wasn't really doing well. But it was like Daniel said, like people who have adapted to like offline to online, in terms, if you did a lot of offline priorly, you need to be able to adapt fully to online. In terms of if your like a previous approach was a lot of advertising, you need to make it even more personal and really stand out from the crowd, and like stand out from the crowd with more personal messages, videos, pictures, whatever, to make sure you can stand out. So if the candidates see 10,000 videos or advertisements a day, what makes yours stand out from the crowd? It could just be like you wearing a funny outfit during your Zoom calls or whatever, to make you stand out, so they pause for 1 second longer just to read your company. Like, it's small things that makes the huge difference, like I said, and that's pretty much the moral of the story, that we want you to think, like, try to adapt small things, and don't be afraid to try new things. Try new things for a day, for a week, for a month. If that doesn't work, try something else. because that is how you improve your entire process. If you're still stuck with trying to do the same thing over and over again and expect things to be different, it's not going to work. But if you continuously tweak small things, eventually you will get there in the long run. You have to try new things all the time.
So we have time for, I think, 1 or 2 more questions. Just as a reminder for the audience, you're welcome to add any questions in the chat that you have for our panelists. But one that we did get was, what are some of your predictions for the future of hiring? Where are we going?
What are we going to try and do, or where's the hiring? And that's a tough question.
It is, and it's a little bit broad, so maybe you could just share how you see hiring changing based on the current climate and changes that will be ongoing because of that. And also just the long-term future of hiring. You know, do you agree that it will be resume-less, things like that?
Yeah,
I definitely think.
If I should start, I mean, I think that, having a recruitment process where 98% of your candidates are being rejected, then, there might be something to look at there, right? At least I would say that then candidate experience is one thing that needs to be, considered and elevated, so that we don't see that many system automated emails being an unpersonal and stuff like that. And I think that they would divide into these 2 things where you're more actively sourcing candidates, which means hopefully fewer and more qualified candidates in your recruitment that you can maybe nudge and give a different experience than when you open a job post where it's more like, hey, we're open for everybody. And so, but I think really be like you are customer focused when selling a product, then starting to be more candidate focused when doing that, and really adapt into the fact and have the mindset. That's what I'm hearing from more and more of our tech companies that are hyper growing at the moment. That is having that mindset that talent acquisition, our customer, that is the candidate. So, okay, how do we deliver the best possible experience for them? Are we moving away from being recruiters and talent acquisition specialists to being candidate experience specialists? That is a way to have a new mindset, and how the interaction with the company is all connected, right? So you cannot have a good employer brand and then treat 98% of your candidate badly. So I think it would be all more connected in the future.
Yeah, I see the trend is recruiting is going to become a lot more like sales and marketing. You'll be working a lot more with pipelining. You'll be working a lot more with marketing. You'll be working a lot more with branding and communication. And a salesperson would never let a hot lead steer away, even if that lead would potentially come back in a year. And I think recruiting will probably be the same. Will you be able to work a lot more with pipelining? Hey, you found this person who might not be a good fit for you right now, but you'll keep that person and contact that person regularly, contact them what's happening, maybe even like start teaching them things. So in a year, that person is ready to join your company and actually do like filling people when they're not even employees at your company, because the tools are getting better and better and better and better. And one of the things that we've seen during this year, there's diversity and inclusion of that kind of things. Tools are getting better to helping you with that kind of stuff. So the tools out there will be able to support you to take you to that step of working more candidate centric, working more person per person, working more talent like pipeline basis, because that is what the tools will help you to do, which means you'll be able to have more time on designing the actual application process, designing the journey, designing the process, understanding the touch points, and building a pipeline for the future, and having close contact with the people that you really want to build like a relationship with and hire in the future.
Yeah, I think especially in terms of hiring in tech, there's a lot of room for growth around cross collaboration with other teams and learning from their methodologies. So what can you learn from marketing about your employer value proposition? What can you learn from product about candidate experience as a product, and then their methodology for user interviews, and then classifying information and iterations and so on, and from literally every single team that you work with, and nurturing your processes from the intersectionalities of processes as well.
On the final note, like one of the things that you say like right now that data is the new oil. So data about people that you're hiring is the oil of the 19th century or the 20th century. And the tools that we have, one of the clear benefits of using a lot of different tools is you can get a lot of data. You can like get data about the candidate experience. You can get data about your pipelines. You get about the time to hire with the touch points and everything. And the tools will just get better and better at that. So I think they see the trend of working in talent in the future is you'll be working a lot more like sales and marketing. You'll be using tools more efficiently, and you'll be working with data a lot more efficiently to understand status quo, understanding behavior, understanding candidates, because we see clear trends of companies being more data driven in general with everything they do, both in sales, marketing, and as well within recruiting.
Yeah, and I think that the point about having really the candidate, you know, in the middle of it, because I mean, the point maybe on if we go 10 years back, then it was more about how do we find the right person. That was like the main thing of recruiting, right? And it still is, but nowadays also with the debate about diversity, inclusion, and all that, you just have to also. I mean, we're living in a transparent world here, more and more transparent world, which means that the way that you do it, the way that you find the candidate, right, is also becoming increasingly important as a part of your actually employer branding, which also means that you need to build a process so that rest of the audience, the 98%, is thinking that okay, it was fair enough actually, and that's also, I mean, then it's not only on the company's premises, it's also on the candidates, or actually more on the candidates' premises.
I think that's a perfect place to end today. And I want to thank all of you, Marie, Daniel, and Fredrik, for your insight today. Also, thank you to our audience for joining. Hopefully this has been helpful, and thank you for your great questions. For everyone that's interested in learning more about what's coming in the future of hiring, our next webinar will be on November 17th, and the topic is going to be predicting the future of talent, what's next for recruiting. So we'll be discussing what you need in your arsenal to ensure that your company is ready for hiring in 2021. Thank you again to everybody so much, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.